William Wordsworth, 7 April 1770 to 23 April 1850. Now, before we get into questions and answers, let's discuss a few points on William Wordsworth. He was born at Cockermouth, Cumberland in the Lake District of northern England. He was one of the Lake poets, and the other poets are Samuel Taylor Coleridge and Robert Southey. So the Lake poets are Wordsworth, Coleridge and Southey, and they represent the first generation of Romantic poets. Matthew Arnold called Wordsworth highest priest of nature, and Shelley called him poet of nature. So, as literature students, you must be knowing that Wordsworth loved nature, he adored nature, and because of his love and devotion towards nature, Arnold called him highest priest of nature, and Shelley called him poet of nature. And Wordsworth called himself worshipper of nature, and he admits this, or he admits that he is a worshipper of nature in his famous poem Tintern Abbey. And Wordsworth was a pantheist, or he believed in pantheism, which means actually pantheism is a belief that God is everywhere, or God is everything in nature and in universe. So that is pantheism. And Wordsworth was highly influenced by French Revolution of 1789. So almost all the Romantic poets were influenced by French Revolution. That is because Romanticism originated in the second half of the 18th century, which was a time of French Revolution. And when you read the writings of Romantic poets, it's evident in most of their writings that they are influenced by French Revolution. First question, an autobiographical poem of Wordsworth that consists of 14 books, The Prelude. Now, The Prelude is a very famous poem of Wordsworth, and it is considered his masterpiece. Now, here are some points on The Prelude. It's an autobiographical poem, and it's also a very long poem that consists of 7,863 lines. And the complete title is The Prelude or Growth of a Poet's Mind. Because the poem records, or it is a complete record of Wordsworth's development from his childhood days to the period of his maturity. That is, from his childhood days to the period of his maturity has been included in this poem, and it is written in blank verse. So blank verse is actually a poem without any rhyme scheme. That is an unrhymed poem, but it does have a meter. Okay, it is free of rhyme, but it does have a meter, usually iambic pentameter. And if you want to know more about iambic pentameter, just watch my previous video on sonnet, in which I have explained iambic pentameter with an example. So just check it out. And The Prelude was completed in 1805 and published in 1850 posthumously by his widow. So these 2 years are to be remembered. That is, completed in 1805 and published in 1850. That is the year of death of William Wordsworth. That is why it is written posthumously. That is, after his death by his widow Mary Wordsworth. So The Prelude was published by Mary Wordsworth in the year 1850, that is posthumously, or after the death of Wordsworth. And this poem is also called Poem to Coleridge. Okay, and it's because the poem is addressed to Coleridge, and Coleridge and Wordsworth are very intimate, and they used to discuss many poetic ideas. And it was Coleridge who, who encouraged Wordsworth to write poems and also to bring out his talent. And that is why the credit is given to Coleridge for writing this prelude. And it is addressed to Coleridge. Now, here are some important lines from the poem The Prelude. So these are very important lines. So, bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, and but to be young was very heaven. Just as we are, the immortal spirit grows, like harmony in music there is a dark. But Europe at that time was thrilled with joy, France standing on the top of golden hours, and human nature seeming born again. So, in the last few lines, that is, but Europe at that time was thrilled with joy. The time Wordsworth was referring to the period of French Revolution. So we just discussed that the Romantic poets were highly influenced by the French Revolution, and it is clear in these lines of Wordsworth from the poem, The Prelude. Which is the year of publication of Lyrical Ballads? 1798. Now, when we speak about Lyrical Ballads, it's actually a joint venture of both Wordsworth and Coleridge. And the first edition of Lyrical Ballads, that is, which was published in the year 1798, was titled Lyrical Ballads with a Few Other Poems. So it's titled Lyrical Ballads with a Few Other Poems. How many poems of Wordsworth are included in the first edition of Lyrical Ballads? 19. In the Lyrical Ballads, that is the first edition of Lyrical Ballads, consists of 23 poems altogether, out of which Wordsworth wrote 19 poems and Coleridge contributed 4 poems. So out of 23 poems, 19 poems were written by Wordsworth and Coleridge wrote 4 poems. And the 4 poems of Coleridge are the Rime of Ancient Mariner, the Foster Mother's Tale, the Nightingale, and the Dungeon. So the Rime of Ancient Mariner, the Foster Mother's Tale, the Nightingale, the Dungeon, and these are the 4 poems written by Coleridge in the first edition of Lyrical Ballads. The last poem found in the collection of Lyrical Ballads, the TINTERN Abbey of Wordsworth, and the first poem was Coleridge's Rime of Ancient Mariner. So please note these points. That is the year of publication of Lyrical Ballads, 1798, and the first edition was titled Lyrical Ballads with a Few Other Poems, and there are altogether 23 poems in the first edition of Lyrical Ballads. Actually, Lyrical Ballads was published in different years, in different editions, that is in 4 editions, and the first edition of Lyrical Ballads consists of 23 poems, out of which 19 poems were written by Wordsworth and 4 written by Coleridge. And the Rime of Ancient Mariner, the Foster Mother's Tale, the Nightingale, and the Dungeon are the 4 poems of Coleridge. And the TINTERN Abbey of Wordsworth is the last poem found in the collection of Lyrical Ballads, and the Rime of Ancient Mariner is the first poem in the Lyrical Ballads. And the TINTERN Abbey and the Rime of Ancient Mariner are the well-known poems of Wordsworth and Coleridge. When was the second edition of Lyrical Ballads published? 1800. Now, the first edition was in the year 1798, and it was published anonymously. So, Wordsworth and Coleridge did not, published it under their name, and it was published anonymously. And the second edition was published 2 years later in the year 1800, which added a preface to the Lyrical Ballads along with a few more poems. Okay, it was published along with a few more poems, and it added a preface to it. And Wordsworth's well-known definition of poetry, that is a famous definition of poetry, was included in the preface. And it was published in 2 volumes. The third edition was again 2 years later, that is in the year 1802, which added an appendix titled Poetic Diction. It was just an expansion of what was explained in the poetic theories that was explained in the second edition was being expanded in the third edition. And the fourth edition was published in 1805, and that is the final one. So 1798, 1800, 1802 and 1805. And one more point not to be missed, that is Coleridge's ballad Love was added to the 1800 edition to replace Wordsworth's poem The Convict. So as we have already discussed, Coleridge contributed 4 poems and the fifth poem was added in the 1800 edition, that is the second edition. Okay, and the poem's titled Love, and that is a ballad. So actually a ballad is a poem or song that narrates a story, that tells a story. A poem that tells a story is a ballad. So Love is in the form of a ballad, and it is a fifth poem, but it is added to the 1800 edition. The 4 poems of Coleridge were added in the first edition, that is in the year 1798, and second edition only 1 poem, that is Love, which is a ballad, to replace Wordsworth's poem The Convict.
How many sonnets did Wordsworth approximately write? 500. The first poetry collections of Wordsworth, Descriptive Sketches and Evening Walk. So Descriptive Sketches and Evening Walk are the first poetry collections of William Wordsworth. The complete title of the poem Tintern Abbey, lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey on revisiting the banks of the Wye during a tour, July 13, 1798. So this is the complete title of the poem Tintern Abbey. Now, more about the poem Tintern Abbey. It consists of 160 lines of blank verse. And Tintern Abbey is on the banks of the Wye River, that is in England. And the poem is divided into 5 parts. And the first 21 lines describe the Wye River, the beauty of the Wye River. And the last part, that is the 5th part, is addressed to his sister Dorothy Wordsworth. So these are the important important points of Tintern Abbey. The year Wordsworth returned from France, 1792. When did Wordsworth first visit Tintern Abbey? 1793. In which poem Wordsworth speaks of the 3 stages in the evolution of his attitude to nature? Tintern Abbey. Now the first visit was at the age of 23, that is in the year 1793 with his sister Dorothy Wordsworth, and the second visit was after 5 years in the year 1798. So the first visit in the year 1793 and the second visit was in the year 1798, that was 5 years after.
Now, important lines from the poem The Tintern Abbey. 5 years have passed, 5 summers with a length. This is the opening line of Tintern Abbey. And as we just discussed that Wordsworth visited the Wye River after 5 years. So that is why it is the poem opened with the words 5 years have passed, 5 summers with the length. Now nature never did betray the heart that loved her. We are laid asleep in body and become a living soul. For nature then to me all in all, the standing contrast haunted me like a passion. My dear, dear friend, and in thy voice I catch the language of my former heart. And here in the last lines, dear friend is addressed to Wordsworth's sister Dorothy Wordsworth. So these are the points to remember. When did Wordsworth and Coleridge meet for the first time? 1795. Which is Wordsworth's finest poem of portrayal of man seen against a background of nature, resolution and independence. Here are some points. It's a lyric poem. Resolution and Independence is a lyric poem which was composed in the year 1802, published in 1807 in Poems in 2 volumes. And it was written in rhyme royal. And rhyme royal is a stanza of 7 lines which are arranged to rhyme A, B, A, B, B, C, C. So rhyme royal means it's a stanza of 7 lines. And another point is that it is also called Chaucerian stanza. Okay, rhyme royal is also called Chaucerian stanza, and it is called so because Chaucer used it in many of his works in the 14th century. Okay, So Rhyme Royal is also called Chaucerian stanza, and it is a stanza of 7 lines with a rhyme scheme A B A B B C C. Now it describes Wordsworth's encounter with a leech gatherer near his home. Now, a promising English poet mentioned in Resolution and Independence, Chatterton, who died at the age of 17. So, Chatterton was a British poet who committed suicide at the age of 17. So, he was mentioned in the Resolution and Independence by William Wordsworth. Who is the lost leader according to Robert Browning? Wordsworth. And here are the lines from the poem The Lost Leader. Just for a handful of silver he left us, just for a ribbon to stick in his coat. Robert Browning here addresses Wordsworth, and he is actually criticizing Wordsworth, because Browning used to admire Wordsworth and his poetry, and but when in later life he accused him of letting his admirers and followers down. That is, Wordsworth changes his opinions and views when he is offered money. And it was for this reason that Browning went to the extent of calling Wordsworth the lost leader. And Browning says that he betrayed his followers for money or for his own welfare. So that is being expressed in these lines. Just for a handful of silver, he left us just for a ribbon to stick in his coat. That is, he changes his opinions, his views, everything for when he is offered money. Who called Wordsworth a moral eunuch? Shelley. Again, for the same reason, Shelley called Wordsworth a moral eunuch, and also for becoming a Tory. Where does the solitary reaper takes place? In Scotland. The poetic form of the solitary reaper, ballad. Ballad is actually a poem which tells a story in short stanzas, or which narrates a story in small stanzas. Now, Wordsworth was inspired by the visit to the Scottish village of Strathire, and the important lines in the Solitary Reaper: I listened motionless and still as I mount up the hill, this music in my heart. Alone she cuts and binds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Which magazine attacked the Lake Poets? Blackwood magazine. Actually, the Lake Poets are Wordsworth, Coleridge, and Robert Southey. A long philosophical poem which is an unfinished work of Wordsworth, The Excursion. And The Excursion was published in 1814, and it consists of 9 long philosophical monologues. And monologue is actually a one-sided conversation. So the speaker gives a long speech, and it's a one-sided conversation. Which are the 2 poems included in Recluse, the Prelude and the Excursion? And the Recluse, the introductory part of the Recluse is the Prelude, and the part 1 is an unfinished poem with no title, and the second part of the Prelude is the Excursion, and the third part is again a poem with no title. So you may get a question like which are the poems that are part of the Recluse? So they are the Prelude and the Excursion. So these are the 2 poems which are part of the Recluse, and the introduction is the Prelude. The only play of Wordsworth, The Borderers, and it is a tragedy in 5 acts which is set during the reign of King Henry III of England. Who succeeded Wordsworth as poet laureate? Tennyson. And Southey, that is Robert Southey, was a poet laureate from 1813 to 1843, that is for 30 years. And Southey became the poet laureate when Walter Scott refused his poet laureateship. Okay, when Walter Scott refused being a poet laureate, Southey became the poet laureate in 1830 till 1843, and he was succeeded by Wordsworth as poet laureate in 1843 till his death in 1850, and then Tennyson became the poet laureate from 1850 till his death, that is in 1892, and it's a long period of 42 years. Sorry, yes, 42 years. So Southey, Wordsworth, and Tennyson. Poems composed according to the principle of emotion recollected in tranquility. Tintern Abbey, The Daffodils, Solitary Reaper. They flash upon that inward eye which is a bliss of solitude. These are the lines taken from The Daffodils. And The Daffodils is a lyric poem which is written in iambic tetrameter. Iambic tetrameter means a line consisting of four iambic feet or iambs. And iambic pentameter means a line consisting of five iambic beats or iambs, iambic feet. Okay. Now, I wandered lonely as a cloud is a very famous line from the poem The Daffodils, and it is the opening line. Wordsworth's poems that represent the education of nature, Lucy poems. And Lucy poems are a series of 5 poems composed between 1798 and 1801. And 4 of Lucy poems were published in Lyrical Ballads in 1800. A Slumber Did My Spirit Seal is one of Wordsworth's Lucy poems. So in this poem, the poet focuses on the death of a beautiful lady called Lucy, and the main character in Lucy poems, the identity is not revealed, whether no one knows who this Lucy is, and the it has long been debated by the historians, and some says that there is no actual Lucy and it is just a fictitious character, but it still remains a mystery. Okay, so Lucy, that's about Lucy poems. And which poet is addressed in the poem London 1802 by Wordsworth? Milton. Milton, thou shouldest be living at this hour, England hath need of thee, are the lines from the poem London 1802. So here, actually this poem is addressed, London 1802 is addressed to Milton, as the title tells, and according to Wordsworth, only Milton can bring back that lost glory of England. So England was corrupt at that time and people have become very selfish, and Wordsworth says that Milton's poems are very powerful and very powerful and amazing, and through his poetic voices he could show England where it was going wrong, and it could bring out a good change in England, and also among the people and in the country. So that's what Milton is saying. So he wants Milton to be alive at that time. He wishes Milton to be alive and wanted to make a change in the country. Thy soul was like a star and dwelt apart, Wordsworth says of Milton. So again, Wordsworth is praising Milton. Thy soul was like a star and dwelt apart. And this is also a line from London 1802. The World is Too Much With Us is a lyric poem in the form of sonnet. Now, here are some lines from the poem The World is Too Much With Us. Getting and spending we lay waste of ours, little we see in nature that is ours. So Wordsworth is expressing his disappointment, and he's just criticizing the world for being materialistic, and they are just the people are just going away from nature. They are very much concerned about time and money, or just getting and spending, and people are very much obsessed with money, and they're just distancing themselves from nature, and that is really worrying Wordsworth, and that is why he's expressing his disappointment in these lines. Now, a narrative poem of Wordsworth based on the story from Georgian Vaughan, Laodamia. And it's a story of Protesilaus, a Greek hero, and Laodamia is the wife of Protesilaus. And that's all for now. And I'll be uploading part 2 of Wordsworth and his major works very soon. So this is part 1. So don't miss it, and don't forget to comment and share your suggestions, and do let me know which topic you in literature you want me to discuss. So do subscribe my channel, and thanks for watching.